Hello and welcome friends on my channel Super Techie Academy. And today in this video, we are going to showcase how we can use Microsoft Identity Platform and OAuth 2.0 on behalf of Flow. So this could be a scenario when you are actually having a client application which is calling a web API, and web API further wants to call another API on behalf of the logged in user on the client application. So instead of having system to system call from web API to web API, this is going to be a on behalf of users call from web API to web API. I hope it makes sense. Okay. So this is the flow where user is authenticated on the client application, and then it is asking initial token from the identity platform, and then it is returning back the first token, and then it will pass that first token to web API 1, which is going to authenticate that particular user on the web API, and then it will return the contents back to the user. And once we get this token here, Web API wants to take further more information from Web API B to get some additional details. So what it will do is it will pass the user initial token, which is generated here in the first call, and client ID and secret generated in the AD registration of this particular web application, web API. So the combination of these three things, access token from the first call, client ID and secret, it will generate another token, which is called on behalf of token, which is going to be used to authenticate this web API. So that token will be passed here and additional details will return back to the web API 1 and then to the actual logged in user. So this is going to be two AD registrations, right? The scenario is going to be there's a client application and it will call a web API, which is secured with OAuth. And in web API, there is another call to a key vault API, which we will pass that authentication details and authorization header to get a secret back from the key vault. So that is going to be the flow. And the ask is that on behalf of user, that secret will be returned from the key vault, not the web API, right? So let's begin with this application. So you have to register two AD registrations for this particular scenario. We'll go to Azure Active Directory. So I've done this already just to save time. So if we go to app registrations, you have client application and web API AD application. So we'll go in client application. We firstly create this. And then we see all the permissions here. We'll add this later once we register the AD application specific to the web API. But let's go in token configuration. So we will add some of the optional claims here, like AUD, audience, and others. So this will be basically needed to actually show in the token as a details. So we need to do that. And we need to configure this callback URL on which the token ID token of that particular user will be redirected, because when user first log in, then there must be some fallback URL here to get the token back as an ID token, not the access token, right? And this is going to be the logout URL. So once that is configured, authentication, token configuration, right? So that is done. Then we will create this API AD application. So we configure all the things like we did before, like we add the token claims here. So the reason we add this optional claim is because when we get the token back from AD, when we request for a token, it will add the client ID instead of the URL. So client ID is important to have audience in audience section because that is what will not cause any issues. So we have to have set this optional claims here in this token configuration for each of the AD registration, right? Okay, so now here, this is the important step. We expose the API and we give some of the excess, you know, some of the scope here, right? In this particular area, like if I go on edit, you can see this application URI is by default added here. So you can save it, and then what you can do is you have to add scope here. So you can write anything here, like anything like any more scopes like admin user or whatever. Then give the details here, and then you can add scope. And when you actually call the API, then you have to pass that scope, right? And then you can add this client application, which we have registered for the UI part, which is where the user will log in. Okay, so here you can see the scopes as well, right? So once that is done, then most of the AD registration part is done, and then you can go back on the client application, and on the API permissions, you can select the expose API there and the scope as well. And then you can basically save this particular application. Okay. So AD part and AD portal thing is mostly done. And then what you can do here is this is the code which is there for the UI application and the web API application. So this is a very simple code, and I did it in Blazor WebAssembly, and this is normal web API in C Sharp, right? This one is MVC1, and this is normal WebAssembly. Okay, so this is a program.cs file where you specify all the information like client ID. This is the token scope for the API that we're going to call is specified as here, and AD configuration, authority, and the client ID of the calling application, the UI one, right? And this is the tenant ID and all that. Okay. So now this is done, then what need to be done here is what we are doing here is basically getting the token out of the ID token we get back when the user is successfully logged in. So in the fetch data area, what we are doing is we basically calling this particular function of the access token provider interface, which will basically get the access token out of the ID token that we have got in the first call when user logged in. And when we get this token, and then we are going to call the web API, passing the authentication authorization details access token in this default request headers and some of the accept headers as well. And then we are going to call this API passing the access token, right? So this API is this code, which I will show you in a while. And once we get to this API, there is another call within the API. So let's see what's there in the API. So if I go in the controller of this API, here we receive this particular authorization header here, and we'll take the token, which basically we have got while passing the API, while passing to the API call, and we receive the token here. And this is the API call to the keyword secret. So this is the secret that is generated in the keyword. Let me firstly show you the keyword, how it is configured. This is a test keyword I have created, and so this is the secret we are talking about here, test secret, and just link. Okay, so today I'm drinking hot ginger tea. This is a secret I have configured here, and there's certain set of permissions that I need to specify here. So let me talk about that. So to call the web API, we need to provide that user specific permissions. For example, um, because this is on behalf of flow, so users should have access to this particular keyword to actually get the content of the secret within the keyword. So in the access control, what I'm going to do here is add a role assignment for that particular user or from where that token is coming. So if I click on role assignment, so this is very important. So you have to see this, which role is specifically we have to assign to that particular user to actually read the secret content. So here you can see, if I select it here, read the secret contents only work for keyword that uses your role with access control permission model. So this role will allow user to actually get the content of the secrets, right? So once we get next, then we will be able to configure this particular user in the keyword. So once that part is done, then what you can do is, then you can go in the code and put the secret here, and we have got the token from the UI here, and this is a keyword URL, right? So look carefully here. So this is the token from where we are getting that API call, right? So remember the steps, right? So from the UI, we have sent a request to the web API to get the token. So that token, once the user is successfully logged in, here we have got ID token. So now from ID token, we have extracted the access token for that particular user, right? So that step, we have sent that access token to that web API. And the code for that web API is this. So this is the entry point for that particular web API where we have received that particular token, user token, access token. And this is the setting we have done. We have created a client ID and secret in this particular API registration application. So the in-app registration, what I have done here is in the API, I have created this particular test secret, and the secret I have created to actually call the on behalf of flow. So I've created the secret, and this is the client ID of the web API, right? And this is confidential client application builder. So this is we are actually building the request for getting the token, which is on behalf of that particular user. So this is the some of the parameters we have configured, like authority and client ID of that particular web API, which will ask the token on behalf of user. And this is the secret for that particular web API. So this is some of the parameters we need to pass as a assertion. So access token is the one that we have extracted here. It's the user access token, and then we have created an object of user assertion and passed these two parameters, scope and user assertion, as a part of this method, which is acquire token on behalf of. So this is the main method which is going to request token on behalf of user by using client ID, client secret of the API application, and the access token that we have received from the client application. And this is very important, that scope, where you need to specify the key vault URL, where you need to, for which you need to access that access token. So that is very important. So you have to specify this in the scope, and this will become the audience part of that particular access token. And once you have done this, then you will get this token on behalf of user, and here you are going to pass that token in a basically request header, and then you can call this particular keyword URL with the name of the secret, and then you will get the content. So this is the whole demo I'm talking about, right? Now I can just quickly run this particular web application. So what I've done is I've basically deployed this web API on Azure just to showcase how it works, right? So in the meantime, just to tell you, if you face any issues or any questions, I will be able to help you, and you can subscribe to my channel, as I'm going to do this on regular basis, new demos every week or something, and also write any issues in the comment section so that I will be able to reply back on that if you face any issue. Okay. Uh, okay. So now application is up, as you can see, and I will log in on the screen. Passwords. So it's test user, and we are going to basically see fetch the content of key vault. Okay, the user is logged in now. This is the fetch data. I'll show you breakpoints like how it looks. Um, that's fine. So we'll fetch the data, and where was the? Okay, so this is the one. Yes, somehow it's not coming, but that's fine. So we'll fetch the data. Basically, it is going to the web API, and web API is going to the keyword to fetch the content of the user from that particular secret. Let's see, couple of seconds, it will be returning the contents. And okay, so this is the token that I've generated in the application. So I have to just amend that part to showcase the token. So the actual response will be in this keyword. So let's show you what it will return. Yeah. So if I log in, it's logged in. Now if I fetch the data, switching the contents, keyword. Okay, so now it's going inside. So you can see, so this is getting the access token from the ID token. So just to tell you quickly, that you have to install Microsoft.identity.web, that package, NuGet package, and this is the key interface that you have to implement to actually get this token. Right, so here we are setting the token, and also this is the deployed web API code that I've shown you here, which is fetching on behalf of token. Okay, so now you can see I'm getting this secret back from the keyword. So this is how I've done on behalf of Flow. So in case of any question, just type in the comment box, okay? Thank you so much, guys, and keep watching this channel to learn more, okay? God bless you.